This is probably the most efficient and safest way to make big power with your BMW. Yeah, I know I'm super late to the party and this video is well overdue, but today we're finally going to talk about and install Reflex Plus on my 700 horsepower 335i. All right, let's see everything that we get inside of the box. All right, so here's everything right here. First things first, here is the brain. As you guys can see on the image here, this does all the legwork. It communicates with the car's DME, sends and receives information. This is where the magic happens. This is the main harness that plugs into the brain, like so. And on the opposite end, you have 6 individual connectors for your car's injectors mounted on your intake manifold. Yes, Reflex Plus is mainly for those that are running port injection and are looking to make big power. This side of the harness looks extremely confusing when you look at it for the first time. Luckily for us, Motiv does detail all of it with diagrams on their website, which makes it easier to understand. Here's the diagram that they provide to us, and I'm looking at the auxiliary inputs. Most of us are going to be using just this one. If you're running an ethanol sensor, you want to integrate it with Motiv. Red, black, and green wire. We'll be using that for my E90 today since we're running flex fuel. And then this one right here, if you have a pressure sensor and you want to, I guess, look at parameters for that, whether it's your low pressure fuel pump, oil pressure, coolant pressure, you would use this one. We won't be needing it because my car already records all that information, so we're good to go. And then this side right here connects to the secondary harness, which is right here. And talking about the secondary harness, this is where things get a little bit tricky, and when people like me tend to back out and just pay somebody to do it, because you have to tap into wires located in a DME box, something I normally don't do and I feel very uneasy about, but I'm gonna go ahead and tackle it today and hopefully teach you guys how to do it as well. And lastly, I purchased this separately. This is a plug-and-play ethanol sensor harness that connects to Motiv Reflex and connects to the already installed ethanol sensor that I have on my E90. I get it, I already have a system in place to monitor my ethanol content, so why would I purchase this? Again, Motiv Reflex Plus, the point of it is that you have all this information readily available in one place, and that's why I'm doing it. By the way, guys, if you are interested in purchasing Reflex Plus or even Reflex Lite, which is a cheaper version of this, I'll have links to our website down in the description below since we now sell these. First thing we're going to do, remove the cowl so we have access to the DME box, remove the old port injector controller, put Reflex in there, then go underneath the manifold here, remove all the connectors to the injectors. Yes, they're bottom mounted on this intake manifold. And then lastly, I have to get the ethanol sensor harness plugged in somewhere back there behind all this clutter. Word of advice, guys, if you're installing Motiv yourself, make sure you're looking at the most up-to-date diagram, which is this one. It was updated like a month ago versus this one. I made a mistake originally and looked at it, but it's out of date. It shows the ethanol sensor connector being the wires orange, black, and green. It's supposed to be red, black, and green. And it shows the pressure sensor wires being orange and black, which is supposed to be blue and red. So make sure you go by this one right here. Off camera, I went ahead and took this off. It was a pain in the ass. That's why I didn't record it. But this is SecondAIC. I ran it on the E90 for over a year. It's just very outdated. Even the software you have to download on your computer is like from Windows 95. And there's a lot of hassles when it comes to this. Like, you ever need to like re-flash the port injection side, you have to remove the cowl, open up the DME box, remove these Phillips screws, and then get in there with a connector in your laptop, and it's a hassle every single time. On top of that, this has a batch fire system, which is not as consistent as something like Motiv, which is a sequential fire system, which allows you to really dial in the fuel. Well, not you, but your tuner to really dial in like the fuel, and theoretically it should be a much smoother experience, and you should be able to make more power just because it's a lot more consistent. Here's another option to control port injection is JB4. Before you guys comment, I know a lot of you guys like it, a lot of you guys hate it. 335 Carlos recently upgraded from JB4 to Motiv, and he's had a really good experience since then. I think his tuner is a lot happier too. Again, older platform, It's just not as consistent, I've heard, as Motiv. Again, I have never ran J before, so I can't talk about it, but this is another option. Here's the installation harness wire diagram for the N54. It's pretty straightforward. They pretty much tell you everything in detail, what wires need to be tapped into what. You'll be using the 2 harnesses that connect to the DME. You got these 3 main black wires. One is for crank, cam, and map. Then you have this other black wire, which is gonna be your ground. The red is gonna be 12 volt. The twisted green and yellow is gonna be canvas. And then this orange one is optional 5 volt, which we're not gonna use. I'll be using these little capsules that Motiv provided. Never seen them in my life, never used these style of connectors, but they seem to get the job done. On one side, you have like this little pointy spot here that's supposed to pierce through the wire that you're tapping into, and then you lock it up. And on the opposite side, you'll take the wires from the harness that Motiv provided, strip them down, put them in there, lock it up. We'll see how well these do. I promise you guys it's not that complicated once you look at the diagram for a few minutes. The main harness here is what we're gonna use for cam, crank, map. Then we have the small harness right here that we're gonna use to tap into canvas. And then we have this green connector with an orange wire, which is the 12 volt accessory. And that's pretty much it. So the first thing I did is prep the wires. So I stripped them just a little bit so we can connect them. The ground wire, we were supplied with this little piece, so we went ahead and clamped it down. It's gonna attach to the side right here. There's a spot for the ground, which I probably won't be able to show you guys on video because it's a hard spot to film. But I'll go ahead and connect that one, and then we'll move on to the rest. So I do have the diagram right here. I'm gonna cheat off of this. We'll start off with the cam wire, which is this one right here. And we're gonna be tapping into this little connector right here. We're looking for pin number 11, shows 13 on here, 1 on the opposite side, so we'll count 13, 12, 11, which is that yellow wire that we see right here. So that's what we're tapping into. That's what the diagram shows. It does say the yellow wire. You need really good eyes to really see these pins, but it's definitely possible. So we'll tap into the wire as far away as possible from the actual connector. So we'll put it like right there, and then we'll screw in the little red thing nice and tight. So that's what it looks like. And then we'll take the cap off the opposite side, and we'll place the strip wire through the cap. And all you have to do is screw it up just like the other side. And that's pretty much it. Pretty simple, right? So we got the cam wire already tapped in. Now we just gotta finish the rest. Okay, we're moving on to the crank wire, which is gonna be on this connector right here. We're looking for pin 29. So on this side, we got 23 and then 44 on this side. So it's gonna be on this side. They don't repeat the same pin numbers on the opposite side, so you don't have to worry about getting it wrong. So we have 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, which is going to be right here, the yellow wire. It's going to be this yellow wire that we tap into. So the idea here, at least for me, is to try to keep this as neat as possible, so if I ever have to open up the DME box, it's just not like a cluster of wires everywhere. Let's go ahead and do the same thing that we did for the cam. So we'll put the little connector, little cap right there, and then we'll screw it on. Okay, that one's good. And just like we did the cam, we'll put the crank right through the little cap, and then we'll put it in there and screw it on. Just like that. Tug on it, make sure it's nice and tight. There you go, 2 wires done. All right, moving on to the map wire that we have to tap in. Same plug, we're looking for pin number 10. Which is supposed to be a yellow wire as well. So all 3 of them are supposed to be yellow wires. It shows number 1 on this end, number 22 here. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it'll be this one right here. As you guys can see, this wire was already tapped into when we were using split-second AIC. We also had to tap into that wire. Again, the same concept as the last 2 wires. Make sure you tug it nice and tight, and we are good. As far as the power, the red wire, we were originally going to tap into the green connector, but since we already kind of tapped off of it, and we have I guess we have an available wire here from the split-second AIC, we're just going to go ahead and connect the wire right there. All right, so the last ones we have to tap in are the yellow and green ones. These are the canvas ones, which if you look at this plug right here, that's the same ones that are like braided together, the blue and red. So that's what we're gonna tap into. Which if you look at the diagram, it says pin 14, which is at the very end, and pin number 1, which is also at the very end. All right, so that's all the wires we need to tap into. Again, the only one we didn't use is the orange one for an optional 5-volt, which we don't need. We might use it in the future, who knows. Now I just gotta go ahead and get these connectors pinned right back into the harness, and then we'll start organizing stuff and then connecting the other harness to the injectors coming from the intake manifold. All right, the next step is to kind of like start thinking about where you're gonna put the box. There's a nice little empty compartment that we're going to use to put it in there, just like we did on the split second AIC. So we'll connect the main connector, which is right here. We won't seal everything up just because we have to update the firmware here with the latest one that Motiv provides. So we'll kind of leave this kind of floating around. Then we'll go ahead and connect this harness to the one that's connected to the Motiv brain, like this. Perfect. So that's connected, ready to go. Like I said earlier, we'll use this one right here for the ethanol sensor, and I don't think we're using anything else. I think we might have to use these 2 wires for something else that Ali, my friend, told me about. We'll look into that later on. For now, I'm going to try to go ahead and manage this and make it look clean somewhat. Might as well connect the ethanol sensor harness, which is going to be the red, black, and green. There you go. So pretty much everything that needs to be connected and tapped into is already done, other than the injectors, which I'll get to that in a bit, and we should be almost done. So what I ended up doing now is I routed the connectors for the injectors underneath the manifold, since these injectors are bottom mounted. It's very self-explanatory, as you guys can see. Just got to line it up correctly right there. Clicks into place. Now I just got to do that for the remainder 5. So what I ended up doing off camera, I routed the ethanol sensor harness around the intake manifold underneath the engine bay, jacked up the car, removed the old harness that we had, replaced it with the Motiv one, and there you go, one less step to do. So everything's pretty much connected. I'm not going to seal up the DME box and clean it up just yet. I want to make sure that Motiv Reflex does work properly, so we're going to move on to the computer. Went ahead and downloaded all 3 files. They told me to download the bin, XDF, and ADF. Downloaded the Motiv firmware bootloader and the free program that you're going to need. That's called Tuner Pro RT. So the Motiv box has a little port for USB, micro USB cable. So connect that, run it over to the laptop. And then all you have to do is open up that firmware bootloader, but we have to switch on the car first. We won't actually turn on the car, you just gotta put it on key position 2 so it's on accessory mode. Now we go back to the laptop and open up bootloader. Assuming you connected the 12 volt and the ground correctly, it should connect. As you guys can see in the bottom right, it says connected. Then we'll hit the file right here, import firmware image, and then we'll click on this one right here, which is the firmware. Now all you have to do is select the file that you downloaded from Motiv, and where it says erase program verified device, you'll click on that, and then it'll start updating the firmware. All right, now we just have to remove the micro USB and cycle the ignition, and we'll move on to the next step. Also a good idea to get a battery charger while you do this, so you don't break your car in the process. All right, so now we're gonna move on to Tuner Pro RT to load on those 3 files that we downloaded from Motiv's website. So we'll start off with the bin file first. File, open bin, go to downloads, and then we have our bin file right here from Motiv 750cc, or you can get the one from your tuner. Then you go to XDF, select XDF, which is going to be this one right here. And lastly, we'll go to acquisition, load definition file, which is going to be the ADX file. Next, we'll go to tools right here, go to preference at the bottom, all the way to the very last tab. You want to make sure that this mimics the table that's on Motiv's instructions page. So you have to make sure all the settings are the same. It looks like the only thing they have that we don't is upload whole tables. So we'll go back into our menu, select that. All right, so the next thing you do is you go to configure plugin, and then you'll select shared with emulator. That's the last thing you do before you load the files. Then you hit the up arrow and the upload failed.
There you go.
It worked. There it is. Awesome. All right, let's make sure we did everything okay. I don't know what's going on with these windshield wipers. Probably low voltage. So we'll start the car. All right, so we're just making sure everything's connected correctly, and Motiv is getting all the information from the car, and it looks like everything's good here. This is pretty much all the live reading. Last thing to do is to update the flash and the DME, and then we should be able to drive the car, see how it feels. Real quick, guys, if you are enjoying the video, I appreciate it if you guys hit the like button. It takes you a second to do, doesn't cost you anything, and it really does help out the channel. All right, so David sent me a new flex fuel tune for Motiv. Have to go up there where it says ethanol content analyzer and pick a Motiv Reflex. Hit the back button and map right. All right, it's done flashing. I'm just gonna turn off the ignition. Wait 30 seconds and then we'll start the car up. Car seems to be running fine. No engine light, no fault codes. I did connect the head unit to the wireless adapter, so we're getting ethanol content from Canvas, which is really cool, something that I didn't have access to before. The rest of the parameters are there. I'm super excited. So now the last thing to do, I'm gonna try my best to clean up this engine bay and make it look presentable. Then we'll take the car for a drive and do a log so I can send over to David. All right, so we just put E85 in the car. We are running the head unit so we can monitor the parameters. We got E83, which is a pretty high content of E85. Orlando's really good when it comes to that. We have a boost controller just randomly just hanging around here. We're not really going to use it anymore because with Motiv Reflex we wired everything in where it's now OEM controlled. So OEM control over the external wastegate. So the tuner is essentially going to go ahead and mess with boost and stuff like that. But since this is a flex fuel tune, it'll automatically adjust the wastegate duty cycle percentage based on the octane that I have. So if I have 93, David Shoup set it up to 20% wastegate duty cycle. E85 is 40% at the moment. And if I go anywhere in between E40, E30, stuff like that, then it'll adjust automatically between two different tables, which is really freaking awesome because normally you would have to do that all separately. And let's say it's a cooler day or a hotter day, you always have to adjust that wastegate duty cycle to compensate. Now I don't really have to worry about anything. It's all DME controlled, and it's a lot safer, and it should be a lot more efficient. Obviously taking traction control off. This is a completely reworked tune, so we're starting from scratch. So we're only going to do 2,500 to 4,000 RPM. That's it, and then we'll send that over to David to make sure it looks clean. If we get the okay, he'll either send a revision or we'll do a full RPM swing for the log. 2,500 to 4,000.
Oh my god.
That felt pretty good. Now we're just gonna get that log over to David and see what he says.
Yeah. Throw me forward and then backwards.
I feel bad because he's trying to hold on to a drink and all his Taco Bell meals.
Everything.
Hey, anything for the sake of the video. I'm so excited to get this car to run right. Like very, very excited. I just sent the revision over to David. I'll probably do all the revisions off camera, and then once the car is fully dialed in, I'll come back, give you guys an update video, and I'll show you guys the entire MHD Plus suite and do some anti-lag. Make sure you guys hit the like button before you guys leave the video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, thanks for watching. Till next time.